All right, welcome to a live Bogosity podcast for the week of August 20th, 2017, the podcast that's the epitome of net non-neutrality. It's also the podcast where nothing is working, which is why you don't hear music right now. But this is your host, Shane Killian, and joining us so far is It's a Bombins.
Yep.
And Daniel Wilcox.
Hello.
We might get Charles in a little later, and I'm not sure who else. I just kind of on a whim, I also opened it up to people who chat in the Discord, so we'll see who shows up. But we do need to get a few notes before we get going. First of all, you may have noticed there was no podcast last week because I had a shoot. I've got another shoot this Friday as well, so I'll have to cancel that one too. That's why I really wanted to get this one out, and ended up having to do it live because it's crazy, but, you know, bills need to be paid, so.
Oof. Bills.
Yeah. Now, a second note, our co-host Jacob Morris is having a short story published in the Clarion Call Volume 3, which should be out in late November, and the story is called Necromancer for Hire, so be sure to check that out. I've put a link in the show notes.
I'd imagine some of his style is reminiscent of Jim Butcher.
And if someone can give me a reminder when it comes out, and I'll make another announcement in the podcast then. One more quick note. A lot of you may have noticed that LastPass has increased the price of LastPass Premium to $2 a month. Some say, it's still worth it. Others say, oh, no, it's horrible. I'm never using it again. I actually think they did a pretty good job holding off on the price increase as long as they did. But free version still gets you most of what you need, and also, apparently, they're adding 1 gigabyte of encrypted file storage to Premium, so I'll have to check that out when they add it and see how secure it is. They haven't let us down yet, but it's really been hard finding a good TNO cloud storage solution. And they're also adding a new families option I'm going to try out as soon as they can. Premium people get like a 6-month trial to it. When it comes out, it's going to be $4 a month, and the idea is that you can just set up for up to 6 family members and share all your passwords together, and your other family members automatically get premium access.
Isn't that illegal now, sharing passwords?
No, in fact, you kind of have to do it for sites like Netflix and Hulu.
Yeah, I heard it, like, they passed a law against something, against it or something.
Against sharing your password?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are so many websites that are going to be made illegal if they do that. That's not going to happen.
Oh, who's joining us here?
Jonathan?
Jonathan, welcome. We do have a new face. Are you from the Discord?
Yeah, I am.
Cool. Good to talk to you.
Man.
So let's replenarate the news of the bogus. Perth Waldorf School is a private alternative school in Australia where apparently the anti-vaxxers have taken hold, and the administrators an anti-vaxxer too, and guess what? A lot of unvaccinated students there may have been exposed to measles.
Oof.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, there was a year 10 student diagnosed with measles in early August. Apparently he had been out of the country and he wasn't vaccinated, and so they sent out a notification to parents, but when the Western Australia government offered to send a mobile immunization unit, the school didn't respond.
Oof. Why?
So wait, for a change, the Australian government isn't the problem?
Right, yes.
Wow,
They're not doing something stupid as well. They probably are doing something stupid, but not this. According to some reports, as many as half of the school's 400 students may be unvaccinated, but the school doesn't release any details about that, so we don't know for sure. They have children from early childhood to high school, and they even run a weekly baby group for infants less than a year old.
And they're not releasing any information on this?
No, I mean, they said that there was measles there, but, you know, they wouldn't get the vaccination unit or anything like that in. And
oh, right.
Needless to say, Australian doctors think they're idiots. Dr. Omar Khorshid said, quote, "It is very concerning that a school would not be interested in making sure its students are protected from measles, particularly when you know you have a high-risk situation with a carrier of measles and where you've got a couple of hundred kids who are not immune. Schools need to take responsibility, and even if you have a slightly different view and have a view on freedoms and choices and so on, you still have a civic responsibility to do the right thing."
Yeah. Amen to that.
Throughout Western Australia, there have been 13 reported cases of measles so far this year. That's more than in all of 2015 and 2016 combined.
Oh, dear.
Fuck.
And we talked before about how quickly measles spread. Something that's been exposed to measles, if a sufferer has sneezed or coughed on it or something like that, can continue to transmit the disease for up to 2 hours. And you also need about 94% of the population to become immune in order to stop measles. And since the vaccine isn't 100% effective, there's not really much room for people to say, "Oh, gee, I don't think I'll get the vaccine." Also, contrary to what the anti-vaxxers say, measles is not harmless. 2 out of every 1,000 children who get measles die from it. Those who don't can develop pneumonia and encephalitis, which can cause deafness and permanent brain damage. Measles can also damage the immune system permanently.
You gotta love those people who downplay, "Oh, you should just let your kids get measles, get it out of the way." That's not how this works.
You got to build up your immune system, you know? Just start
You got to
swimming in
get the disease so you can become immune to the disease so you won't get the disease.
And then they complain that the vaccination contains traces of the disease.
It does not how vaccines work.
Wait, wasn't the first vaccination by like George Washington putting like rotting? God, it was infected.
It was cowpox because they realized that milkmaids were less apt to get smallpox, and they found out that cowpox was similar enough to smallpox that you could use that to inoculate someone and they'd have a resistance to smallpox.
All right, so I was kind of close.
Chris Hangartner in the house.
Yo,
Hey.
Chris.
There you are, Chris.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I was
Yeah,
wondering,
5 by 5.
it felt weird without you being here, Chris.
Yeah, sorry, I fell asleep. I've been working a lot of 5-to-1 shifts, so
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
It's
we're
gotta
just
be fun.
finishing up our first story on Australians who just won't vaccinate their little ankle biters like they're supposed to.
And the government wasn't the problem this time.
just
oddly enough.
have a pox party. Yeah, like that. Like I was watching an old South Park episode, and it was the chicken pox episode where, they pulled the whole thing. They pulled the whole, classic example. Well, it's better for them to get it when they're younger because it's less deadly when they're kids. That's actually not 100% true.
This is how
it's the opposite in a lot of cases. It's definitely the case with pertussis. It's basically harmless to adults. It's kind of like a cold, but to a kid it can be deadly.
This is how epidemics start.
Yep. Also, just a little side note. In that episode, there's a scene where the doctor says, "Well, your son needs his antibiotic shot, or else he's gonna die." And I'm thinking, antibiotics don't work with viruses. Who made you a doctor?
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to our next story. A while back, we talked about the WannaCry ransomware worm. It hit the NHS and many other places. Marcus Hutchins is a security researcher who reverse engineered WannaCry. He found out that the hackers had put in a kill switch, and that was a random domain name that WannaCry checks for, and if it doesn't resolve, it runs. If it does resolve, it stops. So apparently, the hackers felt that whenever they wanted to stop it, they could just register the domain name, and it wouldn't keep spreading. So Hutchins registered the domain name, stopped WannaCry in its tracks.
Huh.
That's
So, yeah, the guy's a hero, right?
yeah.
Sweet. Yeah.
Well, not according to the FBI. They arrested him in Las Vegas airport earlier this month when he was about to fly home to the UK from the DEF CON hacker conference. The Department of Justice has accused him of creating a banking Trojan to steal banking credentials and conspiracy to sell it for $3,000.
On what grounds exactly?
Good morning,
Well, this-
USA.
This gets weird, so let me get the facts out of the way and then we'll do the commentary on it. Marcus has pleaded not guilty and been released on $30,000 bail. Now get this. The government tried denying him bail on the excuse that he had visited a gun range. The courts didn't go for that. But he can't leave the country. He's from the UK, and the defense tried to get him released under UK authority before his trial, but that was denied. He's also specifically not allowed to do anything with WannaCry, which is weird because he's the one who single-handedly saved us from WannaCry.
Makes me want to cry. Honey.
Jealous at him.
So none of this passes the smell test with security experts or with people who know Hutchins. George Washington University law professor Oren Kerr, who has written extensively on cybersecurity and hacking cases, said the charges were, quote, a stretch. And the issue is that while the indictment claims that Hutchins wrote the malware, it says nothing about intent. Kerr explains, quote, it's not a crime to create malware. It's not a crime to sell malware. It's a crime to sell malware with the intent to further someone else's crime. This story alone doesn't really fit. There's got to be more to it, or it's going to run into legal problems. So the stuff they've accused him of isn't even a crime.
Yeah, didn't we say in one podcast that that there's actually a whole industry who deliberately creates malware, and that's to test the security system of computers.
Well, they don't deliberately create malware. They deliberately create hacking utilities like penetration testing and things like that. But there's no way, I mean, it's the same stuff. Something that tests for ways into your network can be used to find ways into your network for the purpose of finding them and closing them off, or it can be used by a hacker to find the way in so he can exploit it. So
it's basically like inoculation for cybersecurity.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you've got to be able to run the exact same utilities that the hackers are using because that's what you're protecting it from. I mean, it would be like making a bulletproof vest, but making it illegal to actually fire a gun at it to see if it works.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah, that's actually pretty good. I like that.
So UK security architect Kevin Beaumont said, quote, I know Marcus. He has a business which fights against exactly this. It's all he does. He feeds that info to U.S. law enforcement. The DOJ has seriously effed this up.
So did he say effed, or are we just doing that to...
The quote I have says effed. I don't know if he said effed or if the source censored it or what, but the quote I have says effed. And Jake Williams, security researcher with Rendition InfoSec, said that Hutchins has repeatedly refused offers of payments for help on projects. And when Hutchins was awarded a $10,000 bug bounty from HackerOne for stopping WannaCry, he gave it away to charity. Williams said, quote, I have pretty good black hat radar. It never went off when talking to Marcus or exchanging stuff with him.
Yeah, Marcus seems pretty white hat, so...
Man, this...
Yeah, I mean, he's good, yeah.
And they're arresting him for why again?
They said he created a banking Trojan and tried to sell it for $3,000, which, even if that's true, that's not illegal. It's only illegal if you do it in order to further another crime.
Yeah.
So firstly, citation needed. And second of all, it's not even a crime.
Just none of this is making any sense.
You know, Big Daddy USA needs to have what they want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, this case once again reminds me of Franz Kafka's The Trial. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're arresting you for a crime we just pulled out of our butts. Under what grounds? We can't tell you.
His trial is currently scheduled for October, but if the government is granted a complex designation, then that could be extended. I'm including a link to his legal defense fund, although from the response so far, I think he's going to have no problems getting the best defense he can. I mean, everyone is backing behind this guy. So
Yeah, that's good.
best of luck to him.
Yeah. Still shitty that it has to go to court, but you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this next story is something the press won't shut up about. It's gotten enormous coverage, and it's completely and utterly wrong. Last Thursday, during the Usenet Security Conference, a group of researchers at the University of Washington presented a 15-page paper entitled Computer Security, Privacy, and DNA Sequencing, Compromising Computers with Synthesized DNA, Privacy Leaks, and More. This got reported all over the place in the news media with, you can hack a computer with DNA, and I'm linking to a report to The Guardian from this, but that's just one example. It's just all over the place. The Guardian headline reads, hacking a computer using DNA is now a reality. Sorry, it isn't.
Hello.
Hey, Charlie. Charles Thomas, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm just,
Charles in charge.
No. Block him, please. Block him. But I was eating lunch, so.
He does not at all resemble Scott Baio.
I'm more handsome.
So Shane, you're saying that the media reported a false story as true? What else
Shock.
is new?
Yeah, shocker, I know.
Yeah,
but it's all over the place. So.
I mean, hell, Shane. I mean, I don't know if you know him, but I forgot the guy's name. But there's actually several groups that are dedicated to just making up bogus news stories just to see if the news will fall for it, and they often do.
Well, 4chan does that all the time. That's where Pisscake came from.
The blacks can't drink milk.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
blacks can't drink milk?
Well, that's not true. I mean, I've been drinking milk for a long while. I haven't drunk some recently, but yeah.
Are you?
Yeah. Well, I know if you're Asian. I know if you're Asian, you're more likely to be lactose intolerant.
They only have problems if they're lactose intolerant.
Just like everyone else.
Yeah, Shane. Yeah. I mean, it's a little off topic, but yeah, I remember that whole incident. Where like there was a guy during the "He Will Not Divide Us" for out of just pure sake of chilling them. They showed up dressed like as a Nazi, and he was drinking milk, and everyone kept saying, "Oh, a Nazi's drinking milk! Don't drink milk! If you drink milk, you're a Nazi." It's like, really, people, It's like.
When he lowered the glass, did he come away with a patch of milk just under his nose and no wider?
I don't know. I don't remember, but it's just.
All right, so here's what's going on with this DNA story. There is a compression algorithm called FastQ. It's designed to compress nucleotide sequences, which means it's sort of like a zip file for DNA. The software to use it is free and open source. So these guys got the source code and deliberately created a security flaw in just the wrong place so that they could give it a DNA sequence that was too long and that overflowed the buffer. And buffer overflows are one big thing that hackers exploit to gain access and run software that isn't supposed to run. But it's not an actual flaw with FastQ, so ding.
Yeah, so here we are. People are like, oh my gosh, it's this thing. And reality comes in, it's like, no, it's not. It's just a random occurrence. That sort of stuff.
But even then, there's a serious problem. The DNA has to be 100% error-free in order for this exploit to run. Only 76.2% of the DNA sequencing was read without error.
So
combine that with the fact that DNA can be read from either direction, but the exploit only worked from one direction, so that cut the success rate in half to 37.4%.
Wow. So again, this is a very rare type of thing. So you're not going to see hackers using this type of thing.
It's just completely contrived. I mean, it's interesting that, something like that could conceivably be feasible, but the software would have to have a security hole in exactly the wrong place. The entire processing pipeline would have to be seriously flawed. And even then, in a best case scenario, you'd have a little over 1 in 3 chance of it actually working. I mean, I don't see this being a tempting vector for hackers.
Well, won't stop movie producers thinking this will be the next big thing. So get ready, ladies and gentlemen. The next two, maybe by next year, you will see someone hacking computers with their DNA and everything else, and they'll say it's true, even though it's not.
Well, I
Sounds like
mean,
complete
movies
sci-fi,
can do fun things that just aren't realistic. That's fine. But as far as the real world is concerned, any proposed vulnerability has to be accompanied by a proof of concept, and they don't have one. I mean, it would be kind of like you can get the LastPass source code because you have the JavaScript. It's embedded in the XPI file, and you can get that. So you take it and just on your local copy, you program in a flaw that lets you get someone's master password, and then you run around going, LastPass is flawed, LastPass is flawed. No, it isn't. You know.
Yeah, I think people just want that one thing. They always want that. You know.
I'm sure it's flawed, but not in the way they're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, they're saying it's possible to program in something that will let people hack their way in. Well, we know that. Of course, we know that. You know, that's true of anything.
Have you considered writing a book on cybersecurity?
There are too many awesome books already. In fact, I think it's expired now, but what's the name of that website? Humble Bundle. You know, they come up with different bundles of, you know, different books for like dirt cheap, and the proceeds go to charity. And so like a month or two ago, they had this cybersecurity bundle with all these great books in it. And I was going through, I was like, man, this is good. I got to get it. It was like $15 for all these books. And then I saw they had the 20th anniversary Applied Cryptography by Bruce Schneier, which is the one I cut my teeth on. And I was like, shut up and take my money.
Yeah, I might actually look into that on the bundle.
But it's got books by, you know, Kevin Mitnick and other hackers and cybersecurity experts. I mean, it's great. So maybe they'll do another one like that soon. But I mean, check them out. They've got all sorts. They seem to have a lot of gaming books that are like that. Like if you want to get into role-playing games, they'll have like a whole bunch of books about that system that you can get for dirt cheap.
I remember they used to bundle pretty big name games.
Yeah. And they have these little sliders at the bottom where you can control how much of it goes to which charity.
Oh, that's neat.
Oh, yeah.
I wish our taxes worked like that.
That's actually the thing I say. You know, people say, well, you know, libertarians shouldn't take the matching funds for elections because that's taxation and that's theft. Well, yeah, except it's the one part of our taxes they give us a choice on, because you have to check that box for $3 to go to the fund. So,
yes, if the private sector reformed taxation.
Oh, yes. There'd be far less bombing.
And so don't be fooled. Never panic by anything you see reported in the news media, particularly about technology. These guys just do not know what they're talking about, but they're always ready to sound the alarm. But as far as this hacking a computer with DNA is concerned, move along, folks. There's nothing to see here. And now it's time to SMH at this week's biggest Bogon emitter. And this week it goes to Bloomberg's John Tozzi for, I don't even know how to describe this. Basically, he's claiming that corporations are profiting from a drop in life expectancy.
How?
Well, he claims...
Well, I mean, they can't take any money from you when you're dead.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of my mom's boyfriend. He believes the conspiracy that they developed a cure that can cure all cancers, and that they're not doing it because if they sell it, then people won't get sick, and they can't sell any more drugs. And I'm just thinking, you don't know how economics work.
Never mind how diseases work.
Exactly.
It's like synonymous with the broken window fallacy.
Yeah, I know it. And I know it's a little off topic, but, you know, the sad truth is for all those people that are wishing for a miracle drug, guess what? Cancer doesn't work that way.
Nope.
No.
There really isn't
Like,
such a thing as cancer. One thing you can label and say this is cancer. It's actually a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah.
Though if they had a cure, why wouldn't also they sell it for top dollar to, like, the richest elites?
Right.
Yeah, you know,
If that was their motive.
Yeah, but this article, wow.
Yeah. Tozzi claims, quote, if people don't end up living as long as they were as they were projected to just a few years ago, their employers ultimately won't have to pay them as much in pension and other lifelong retirement benefits.
Wow. So again, there just seems like it's all part of a huge. It's everyone think there's a huge plan or something because of these type of like correlation. This correlation does not have causation majority of the time, and yet people seem to forget that.
Well, I mean, it's not even that sophisticated because he's basing all of this on the first increase in the death rate since 1999. He says, quote, "The fact that people are dying slightly younger won't cure corporate America's pension woes, but the fact that companies are taking it into account shows just how serious the shift in America's mortality trends is. The problem is, even as the graph he himself shows, and it's a graph from the National Center for Health Statistics, it just shows this tiny little upward blip at the end, which is pretty meaningless. I mean, look through the graph and you see similar blips in the early 80s, early 90s, early aughties, late aughties. And the one in the early 90s was actually pretty severe by comparison.
Yeah, this was just a little, and then this thing, because it could go worse. It could be like 1950 where it was, it was a little higher. So
yeah, but I mean, you get these little blips up, and then after that, you have a regression to the mean, and the downward trend continues. But there's this little blip, and like, oh no, the sky is falling.
It is this whole concept of this whole panic thing, this whole clickbait, panicking, this type of stuff that people are like, oh my gosh, this thing, this, that, and the other. It's not really that type of good journalism. It gets people wound up in fear, have them people like stockpile all this other stuff, and then a couple months later it goes away, and people sit there. You're like, oh, well, we just wasted up time, money, and energy for no reason. And even worse, it numbs people to the fact that there is something really bad happening. They'll just get numb to it.
As the old saying goes, you supply the pictures, I'll supply the war.
Yes, and I mean, he fearmongers all over the place. He says, quote, "Absent a war or an epidemic, it's unusual and alarming for life expectancies in developed countries to stop improving, let alone to worsen. But not on this tiny little scale. I mean, this is like random noise or something."
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what this kind of reminds me of, Shane? It kind of reminds me of some of those people, where like when you tell them about a revolutionary new medicine that will greatly improve our lives, people are like, oh my god, that means people are going to live longer, produce more, and then we're going to become overpopulated and all die.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a complete myth too.
And yet people in this, in fact, aren't we still, like, if the entire world can basically stand in one place, like for example Texas, isn't that like there was a saying that you can have fit the entire planet, like one state like that, big state in Texas, and all 7 billion of us, if we stand together, and we'll be just fine.
It's like if the average size of a family is 4 people, then everyone would get a 1/4 acre lot in Texas.
So it wouldn't be too terrible, and everyone explains this. Oh my gosh, the world is coming to an end. It's this again, this fear mongering, and I think I fall for this sometimes. We all do, but it's just you have to look and measure these type of things. You have to look at it and such. And meanwhile, these peddlers, these guys, and sit there. This John Tozzi, who just does these like huge type of these stories, they profit from these, and it's not really that that type of good journalism. It's just again this tabloid type news, which is sadly has crossed over into some cases of the new media and such.
Yeah,
the new boss, same as the old one.
Yeah, and I still can't forgive the mainstream news for getting rid of Michael Flynn. Because Michael Flynn was like one of the few politicians who actually gets it. Like, he was making statements that says, I think one way we can reduce terrorism is to stop interfering and all that. And then what happens? He gets Donald Trump is pressured into firing him. Why? Because someone somewhere on the internet said, "Oh, Russia's hacking the elections," and Michael Flynn knew about it.
Yeah, and
Simon.
Yeah,
Simon Petrikov in the chat just said monarchism is better than democracy. Well, I guess you do have fewer targets when the revolution comes.
Well, that's true.
And then the revolution, for the most part, is going to end up killing itself, like what happened in France.
Yeah, nothing but repetition, man.
It is, and that's the worst thing. If you want to go talk about that, is is people always want to say the most loudest and say, "Oh, we want revolution," but when they do get it, they have no idea how to make anything work.
Yeah, that's what.
They don't have any any plans or anything. They'll just say, and they'll go running back to the former master, say, "Hey, how do you do this? And how do you do that type of stuff?" That's how it is.
That's how communism survives.
That reminds me of this funny comic, political comic I once saw. It was from the 1970s when there was a country called Rhodesia. That's what Zimbabwe used to be called. And after the communist guerrillas took over and put Robert Mugabe in power, he basically passed all these laws, which basically made it virtually impossible for white people to live there. So they all left. And what happened? Their economy crashed because nobody knew what to do. Anything.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, there was this funny political comic which shows Mugabe sitting on a tractor, and behind him are some dead white people, and he's turning around saying, could you tell me how I start this thing?
Exactly. Now he's begging. He is begging for white people to come back to his country. It's again, it is easy to do the revolution. But if you don't have anything, it's like, for example, people are like this whole show, I think it was on the Amazon Prime show about Black America or something like that. Where the dude behind Boondocks making it, and people are like, it's gonna be great. I'm like, I hope he knows. I hope that when that thing is made, they better have people, don't fantasize. Oh, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be all good. No, he better have the wherewithal to make sure that how to form government, how to form all these type of things. Because if you don't, you're gonna end up like a failed state. You're gonna be running back to the people who you ran it last and say, "Hey, can you help us out?" And that's you being back in the same position.
Yeah, and South Africa is going through a similar thing as I was describing. I tell this to people all the time when I criticize the ANC. They're like, "Oh, so you want apartheid back?" No, I'm just saying that all that should have changed when South Africa became more democratic is they should have ended the apartheid laws, but that's it. The problem with South Africa is like, oh, we got to do more than that. Now we got to start redistributing everything. We got to make it so everyone gets their fair share and all that. And now you get modern day South Africa, which is failing.
Oh yeah, a failed state, and it's again people who think they know this concept, and this is why China is coming in and buying all that land, and there was a documentary about this, and it is really, and I saw a segment of it. It is basically just the Chinese first time these black dudes saying, "Oh, we had this revolution." Black dudes like, "We had this revolution like 50 years ago. We were free and everything else." And he said, "Yeah, but what did you do? Did you pick up and learn anything? Did you?" The Chinese like, "Did you do anything? Did you actually set up things up?" It's, "No, it's just a revolution. We just got our freedom. We just did this, that, and the third." But no, did you learn it? Do you know how to build governments and everything else? And he's like, "No, we didn't do that." The black dude say he didn't do that, and he's like, Chinese man basically said, "We just have to. This is going to take generations just to clean this mess up." Yeah. And that's a shame because it's easy to say the revolution. Easy to do that. It's easy to say revolution. Easy to say all this type of stuff. The hard part is actually knowing what comes after.
That's why the American Revolution did so well, actually, because we had smart people who were taking command and everything.
Yeah, people who actually had an idea of how things should be done.
Yeah, and actually, as you were describing, Charles, that actually reminds me of this video I saw one time, which flat out showed the real reason why Africa is poor, and the reason why Africa is poor is not because it's destined to be poor. It's because, as you pointed out, when it was going through the process of decolonialization, there were all these revolutions and all that, and it was good, that they were no longer under European control. But the problem was that a lot of their new leaders were idealists who think they could just basically get rid of everything and start from the ground up, and they couldn't. Because, ironically, as, just like that one college girl who said science was pro-colonialism, that's what they all said. They all said even the good ideas like democracy and free markets, that's colonialist ideology, so we can't have it.
We should all be teaching voodoo.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's just that type of stuff again and again, and until when it's again, this video with I think the rapper Killer Mike, I think is that and he said like this pretty much. He said how many he asked the people like in the pro back courses and said how many of y'all know how to fish? How many of y'all raise hand that they bring up? Like how many of y'all own a gun? Raise how many how do you shoot it? The last people raise their hand. How do you know how many people know how to fish, how to plant gardens, know how to do all this type of stuff? And their hands got lower and lower. There's not many people do. I'm like, you can't talk about revolution if you can't do this stuff by your own self, getting food and everything else. And he got booed, but he got the crowd back on his side. But it's pretty much right there. If you could talk about revolution, that's fine. But if you don't know how to take care of yourself, it's just meaningless. And you just go right back to your oppressors telling you how to run things.
Yep. All right, back to the stories. So,
sorry for that.
Oh, I forgot
okay.
we had stories.
Oh, we had a story.
All right, check out this quote. Yeah, this is John Tozzi again. Quote, life expectancy at 65 rose by just about 4 months between 2010 and 2015, half the improvement recorded between 2005 and 2010. Okay, let's do a bit of math. 4 months over a 65-year period. That's a little over 0.5%. So things got better by 0.5% as opposed to getting better by 1%. And this means the apocalypse is coming or something.
Yep. It sells papers. What will sell a better website, get more clicks? Saying, okay, this 1% of things getting a little bit better and all this type of stuff, or saying, oh my gosh, the rich companies are coming together, make sure you don't get paid much anymore, and all that type of stuff. Which sells better? Like I said,
No, you got to realize,
and that's exactly it.
You got to realize that news, they're not making money off the stories; they're making money off the ads. So they're not really in the business of news. Think of them more as the business of advertising.
They're in the business of clicks.
Mm-hmm. Bingo.
Yeah, John Stossel, he did back in the 90s when he was in ABC, he did a whole program on this called Media Hype, where he talks about how the news, they do it all the time because they need to sell those ads. So they basically just take, even if the story is somewhat true, they over-exaggerate it to the ump's degree.
Idiot.
Well,
Extraordinaire.
not yet. All right. Daniel's warming up for his big performance.
I thought my mic was off.
Yep.
Okay.
It's on. It's on.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, so he's taking what's probably yet another short-term blip, using it to spread fear about an unknown future where we all die, but the corporations gleefully profit somehow. So for that reason, only John Tozzi could be this week's biggest Bogon emitter. All right, you ready, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm going to try something a little new.
All right.
all right.
And now let's induce vomiting onto this week's
Idiot Extraordinaire!
The voice of an angel.
And that's like that. Everyone's listening to headphones and now, about to do Shane.
A voice
we
of an
just
angel.
lost
If a Dalek died and became an angel, that's probably what it would.
An angel.
Sorry, we were talking about the Dalek thing before, and I just had to give it a shot.
All right, this week it's the FDA who has decided not to learn from either history or science and mandate that the nicotine levels be lowered to curb addiction exactly as it's been shown not to do. And this would actually be the first time the FDA has regulated nicotine levels in cigarettes, but back in the 60s, the tobacco companies sought to increase nicotine concentration, but they backed down when the news media hit the ceiling and politicians threatened with regulation. And so now they actually want to make it so they have to lower the amount of nicotine in a cigarette.
Because if you lower it, obviously it stops people from smoking.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah, and not to mention, if I recall correctly, nicotine isn't even that dangerous. And yes, that is the addictive part of it. But even then, it's not that as addicting as people think it is,
Well, we'll get into the science in a minute, but let's get to what he said first. So this is FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb, quote, The overwhelming amount of death and disease attributable to tobacco is caused by addiction to cigarettes, the only legal consumer product that, when used as intended, will kill half of all long-term users. Unless we change course, 5.6 million young people alive today will die prematurely later in life from tobacco use.
Just legalize weed. My mom said she would quit if, we basically just legalized weed.
Well, it's funny. It is interesting how tobacco, this legal drug, has destroyed so many lives, families, and do all this type of horrible and terrible things, is still legal. But yet something like weed, which has no death, no one killing, and everything else, is still illegal in most states. And in fact, it's still like the top drug, thing over, and the ATF and everything will put you, if you're smoking weed in some place, you're basically your life, your career, everything will be destroyed, and you'll be sent to a prison for the rest of your life, 4 or 5 years.
We're trying to help you though by arresting you and destroying your life and your reputation.
Because if we don't, drugs will destroy your life.
Yeah, and that was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Like when I was studying for a pharmacy technician, was that I seen marijuana as a Schedule 1 drug, and I was just like, yeah, I'm not gonna do this.
Yeah, I was gonna say tobacco has a better lobby. So.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as far as e-cigs are concerned, the FDA is talking about regulating them too, but they say they'll give them more time to submit them for review. So they're being nice.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Here's the problem. The reason why people smoke cigarettes is, because they're addicted to nicotine. So they need to get their fix, which means they need to get a certain dosage to stop the craving. Inhaling it means that the nicotine gets to the brain in something like 10 seconds, basically before they can take the next puff. Watch people smoke, when it's outside an office building or something like that, and you see all the people on their breaks standing around smoking. Watch them. They don't always finish that last cigarette. They stop when they get to the dosage their brain's demanding.
Oh yeah. Most of the people at my work, they smoke all the time, and they don't even finish the cigarette. They just smoke it till it's halfway, then they discard it.
Yeah, take a peek in the ashtray and see for yourself.
Yeah.
But nicotine, as someone else, I'm sorry, I forget who, someone said earlier, nicotine isn't really the dangerous part of the cigarette. It's the tars and the other crap in them. If you force tobacco companies to lower the amount of nicotine in an individual cigarette, it means that people are going to be smoking more cigarettes to get their fix, meaning they'll get more of the tars and other crap.
This will just add to the death toll. This will add to the death toll from the FDA.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm linking to a study published in the New England Journal of Medicine, which found that smokers of low nicotine cigarettes nonetheless consumed the same overall amount of nicotine as measured by actual blood concentrations. And I mean, even considering applying it to e-cigs, which is one of the most effective smoking cessation tools ever invented, are you really just saying that you want more people to have more health problems? Well, maybe so you can justify even more government intrusion?
That's what the game is that they're doing this just to I'm sorry, but I want to make my little point here. Just to bring in just say we'll help you, but we'll give, if you're feeling more sick, we'll bring in more governments and such, and that, because that always works.
Yep.
No, if they didn't make it so expensive to actually just sell the actual vapes and the e-cigarettes,
to help you, the only thing you're allowed to take, the only thing you're allowed to do is as a group like Alcoholics Anonymous, which has been proven to not work.
What were you going to say, Daniel?
I forgot.
Oh. All right, but I'm also linking to an article about a study published in Nicotine and Tobacco Research showing that vaping low nicotine e-liquids can increase exposure to carbonyl compounds, which can cause cancer. So that's just going to harm the health of vapors, not help them.
Yeah.
And guess what? They also say they're going to regulate kid-appealing flavors because no adult likes the taste of strawberries or something.
Yeah.
What?
It's so hilarious, you know, like how they make those e-cigs in like different flavors, and people are like, oh my god, they're trying to advertise it for kids. No.
Yeah, they always make that excuse. Cartoon character. Oh, it must be going to kids, but cartoons aren't just for kids.
The reason why they do this is because they want to, government wants to have that type of more influence and more people, this type of thing.
And anything that makes people think their children might be the target of this sort of thing.
Don't always think about the children unless they're, it's like, won't someone think of the children? And then meanwhile,
did you ever do a quickie on that? You know, the whole think about the children argument.
I don't know if I did or not. I'll have to check on that.
Yeah.
I don't think you did.
Because that would be an excellent quickie, because I cannot tell you how many bad laws are passed because people said, think about the children, cough, cough, Megan's Law.
Yeah.
Let's make it so that way a convicted sex offender can't live anywhere, can't get a job and all that. That'll teach him. So he's going to end up committing crimes because he can't support himself legally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he's already living that life of danger, so why not just hop into some big window?
I saw a documentary about that. You know, I mean, there were all these people saying, "Oh my God, there's this little commune of pedophiles, living near us, and they're going around stealing." While a reporter went down there, and the people said the reason we do that is because we have no other choice. Megan's Law says we can't get a job, we can't live in certain areas. So what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, someone, I think it might have been John Stossel, was looking at something like Chicago, and Chicago had passed laws like they can't live within, 500 yards of a school, within 500 yards of a church, 500 yards of a playground, and listed all the places on the map, and there was basically nowhere in the entire city that they could go.
Yeah, except for like a giant, except for this little area underneath the highway freeway.
Yeah, but in order to get there, you have to go through some areas you're not allowed.
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense.
Did it say you can't live there or you can't be there?
Yeah,
I think it was you can't be there.
Because you said live before, and that's an entirely different.
Actually, I saw a video of Bill Clinton signing into Megan's Law, and one guy posted funny in the comments saying, "Yeah, isn't it ironic that a child protection law is being signed by a guy who's had his fair share of inappropriate sex with his secretaries."
And again, that's the thing is is it basically if you're accused, that's pretty much you're done. That's
pretty much
that to me is that right there. If you're accused of it, if you're not proven of the crime, then you shouldn't be going to doing all these type of things because honestly, the way we do a law system in this country is very screwed up, and even better. Even if they do go to prison or anything else, we don't rehab. It's a punishment, vengeful thing. It's always vengeance and all this type of stuff that beats people down, and then you basically doing social solitary confinement, which has basically been proven that was pretty much torture, and now people are like, well, but it's always convinced people will just say, and that's the real hard thing is that to convince the people that that they the people are like, hey, they're we have to humanize them, the prisoners and such. People don't want that. Like they're all evil and everything. It's that binary type of thinking.
Yeah.
And until we get rid of that, we have to change people's minds. Win the hearts and minds of people and humanize them. And honestly, I think shows like Orange is the New Black is probably helping in that aspect. I think we can see eventually we'll move more to other countries where they handle prisoners and such.
So wait, if Orange is the New Black, does that make people making fun of Trump racist again?
Well, also, oh yeah, and I remember what I was going to say, and actually going back, I've actually met a ton of people, who have said, that 90% of the time people will go to jail for just completely minor offenses, but it's there where they learn how to successfully commit major offenses. A perfect example of this is juvenile hall. All those correctionals say, yeah, going to juvenile hall till you're 21, that'll teach you to be a good citizen. Guess what? Most criminals said, that's where I learned how to be a criminal.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, did you hear about the one guy who was stuck in isolation for 5 years, and they kept changing his date to go to court? And they kept changing it. So, of course, he went mentally.
Oh, solitary confinement is just pure inhumane.
Yeah, that's torture. It's torture.
Yeah, I've seen a video of what the cells are. They're tinier. They're tinier than a closet. There's no window. All you have is a bed, and in some cases, they even, if you have to go to the bathroom, they just give you a bucket. Yeah, in that documentary, that person, there was actually one person when they saw that scene, they commented saying, "Wait a minute, I thought this wasn't America, not Turkey."
Yeah.
Right now I'm hungry.
Yeah, but this is the same kind of thing with the FDA and the nicotine. They're using completely bogus reasons to pass regulations that will not solve the problem, but will result in more harm to smokers and vapors. So that's the kind of thing that'll get someone like the FDA named this week's
Idiot Extraordinaire!
Beautiful. 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
I can't hear now.
I tried to turn my headset down to the lowest volume. I can still hear it.
Thank Shane for inspiring me to switch it up this week.
Don't blame me for that. That was all you. All right, that is it for another live edition of the Bogosity podcast.
All right.
Thank you, too. Let's see. We have Charles Thomas.
Thank you.
Chris Hangartner.
Thank you.
It's Abannons.
All right, see y'all.
Jonathan.
Thank you.
And
wait, no, I'm not Jonathan.
What is this? Oppression.
I don't know. We all can't hear anyways when he's calling our name.
Yeah.
And thank you for listening. Until next time, here's a quote from John Stossel. Generally, the control freaks only increase control. Take cigarettes. At first, it was just warning labels. Then bans on TV ads. Then they required restaurants to have no smoking sections. Then came the bans on airplanes, schools, workplaces, entire restaurants. Then bars, too. And now, sometimes apartments and outdoor spaces even.
Yeah.
The Bogosity podcast is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License.